Welcome to Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda. Earlier this summer, Janice and I had a chance to visit somewhere I've always wanted to go. It's 5 fishing villages, basically perched on the cliffs of the Liguria region of Italy called Cinque Terre. And these 5 fishing villages, they're beautifully picturesque. You can't actually drive into them. You have to, there is a train track you can take, or you can walk into them, or you can get from one to the other by means of a boat. But beautiful places to see. And we were there, the sun was shining down. It was absolutely gorgeous, brightly painted houses. If you've ever seen the Pixar movie, Luca, then you'll recognize one of those villages, Vernazza, which was the inspiration for the beautiful scenery that they incorporated into that animation. Now, of course, we had to try the food. We do that everywhere we go. And I loved one of the local specialities, which is a gnocchi served with pesto. Now, I knew that pesto was made from pine nuts, but up until then, although I've had pine nuts, and pine nuts are supposed to be a superfood, I'd never really stopped to think about where pine nuts come from. And yes, they do come from pine trees. Not just any old pine tree. Of all the many species of pine trees in the world, there's just 20 have edible nuts to them. And only 4 of them are really used much for commercial production of pine nuts. And now, for a pine tree to really reach the point where it can produce pine nuts, it takes over 50 years of cultivation. And then even when the pine cones, because the nuts are inside the cones. Yeah, those same kind of pine cones. Yeah, you see it on Christmas trees and stuff. Well, it takes, once they begin to develop, it takes 18 months for each pine cone to reach a stage of maturity where you can harvest the pine nuts from it. And then they pick the pine nuts from the top of the trees, and it takes months of training, apparently, to do this right. And you put the pine cones in bags, and they're then left in the sun in the bags to dry for 20 days. And then the cones are smashed, and each little pine nut has to be picked out one by hand. And even then, they're not ready to be used for food because they have a further shell around each nut, and that shell has to be carefully picked off them. It's no wonder that pine nuts are expensive, but they are a superfood, and pesto is so tasty. But I'm still amazed that people bother to grow them at all. You think there would be other things they could grow that would be a lot more profitable, that would demand a lot less work. And when I think of all the intensive labor that goes into producing pine nuts, I'm going to enjoy every mouthful of pesto to the utmost that I can. And yet somehow people realized that it was worth it to do all the work and all the care and all the preparation and all the planning to produce these little pine nuts. In a similar way, God looked at us and saw something wonderful that he could create from us. Nobody else could have seen it. We were a mess. We required so much work to bring out even anything worthwhile from our lives whatsoever. And God decided he was going to create something from us. He took thousands of years to do it. He called people, he raised up prophets, judges, deliverers, and kings. He parted seas, he worked miracles, he sent manna from heaven. He sent his own son in human form to die for us. He built his church, filled his church with his spirit, has sustained his church over 2,000 years. He's inspired men and women to go forth and sometimes lay down their lives preaching the gospel, translating the Bible into their own languages. God's gone to all of this wonderful, amazing plan, preparation, and trouble in order to bring something good out of us. Yes, I love pesto. And I am grateful that people like those in Liguria do all the trouble and planning and preparation to make pesto and produce that beautiful meal that I enjoyed in Vernazza in Cinque Terre. But I'm infinitely more grateful to God that God saw something good in us, and God has worked out his master plan so that we can be the people that will declare his glory for all eternity. And that's something worth celebrating wherever you are. May God bless you today. Have a great day. Join us next time for another Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda.